Welcome to Weapons Education. Tonight I decided to do a video on Glocks and why law enforcement agencies choose Glocks as their premier weapon in general. Just in general, it seems like a lot of law enforcement agencies do utilize Glocks, and what I'm going to do here in a moment, those of you who have been watching my channel know about Officer Dave, 20-year veteran. He's going to call here in a moment. I'm going to cue him with a text, and he's going to call, and we're going to talk on the speakerphone, and I'm going to ask him some questions as a 20-year veteran from an actual cop, and his thoughts on why so many agencies choose Glock for their weapon of choice. I'll show you what I have here on the table, and I'll tell you what my 2 cents is. Of course, I am not law enforcement, but I come from a family of law enforcement, including my father, and unfortunately my uncle was killed in the line of duty. My brother-in-law's a cop, and more of my relatives are law enforcement. So I do have a little bit of a feel of why law enforcement agencies choose Glock. And I would like your input, especially all of you Leos out there. There's a pretty good chance that you're probably carrying a Glock, whether on duty or off. What's your input as to why you carry a Glock? I'll tell you what mine is. First, let's look at what I grabbed a couple of things out of the vault. Now, first, what am I wearing? This has a really cool shirt from Glock. My favorite carry system of all is the shoulder holster. My opinion, you can do what you wish. You know, to have a gun in your waistband and in your pocket. Sometimes, if you're in the car, it's difficult to get to. This, to me, is always easily accessible. Of course, you got to conceal it, but I love this shoulder system. Okay, whether it's from Galco or whether I prefer to get them from the custom system that I have. But this is all about Glocks right now. This is my 29, which is the smaller 10mm. This is a 20C, and the C stands for compensator. Would you please zoom in on that? I want to answer this question now because it's going to come up, and I always get these PMs, you know, Tom, should I get the compensator or shouldn't I? Okay. Now, well, the answer is, in my opinion, I like the compensator because the 10, you know, it's a big round. It's got a bit of a punch to it, and it's the most powerful Glock made, the Glock 20. So, or the 29. They're both 10mm. The 20's got the longer barrel, so it's a little bit more velocity. But the compensator, people say, well, the flash that comes up because it reduces gas, but there is a flash that comes up at night. Will it blind you? I've never had that issue. I've only shot it at an indoor range. I've never had an issue with the flash coming out of the compensator. So I would recommend, yes, get the compensator because it does reduce recoil. Alright, so what we have here is a full-size 20, 10mm. I don't know if I didn't grab a 45, but we know they make the 45 also. And here's, what is it? Here's a 45 here, 30. This is the smaller version of the Glock 45 with the same magazine as the 21, the full-size version. So there you have like 15 plus 1 rounds. Here's another 30, and I have crimson traces. They're just dressed out a little bit differently. One's got a light on the front, one's got a rail, one doesn't. This 29 has a rail with a light laser, Streamlight TLR 2S. Just give me your input on what you like about Glocks. But basically, we're going to talk about why law enforcement agencies choose Glocks. Okay, here's what I think. I think, 1, reliability. The Glocks, as we know, they're reliable. They've been through torture test after torture test. You can bury these things for a year in mud, take them out of the mud, and not do anything to them, and just load them up, and you know they're going to fire. They're always going to go bang when you pull the trigger. That's one. That's one thing. 2, they're easy to break down. You can break this down in 6 seconds, or 5 seconds, or 3 seconds. It's just so simple. It's ridiculous. 4, there's not too many parts to them. So when it comes to cleaning them, I mean, I think there's what, 33 to 36 parts in a Glock. There's not many parts as a whole. As a matter of fact, I'm becoming a Glock armorer. I'm going to go to the school along with Pete at the Armory channel. We made this decision today. We'll talk about that in the future. Just to give you more information about Glocks in detail so we're more educated to educate you. But so they're easy to break down. There's not too many parts. You don't have to clean them like after every shooting. You know, I do, of course, and you probably should. but you don't have to. They like to run dry, and they're accurate. Females they seem to adapt to them pretty well, the Leo officers, and they come in a lot of different calibers. One of the few manufacturers that still make a 10mm, for instance. So with all that said, we're going to talk about holstering here in a moment when we get Dave on the phone, okay? And he's going to tell us, as an expert, as a true 20-year veteran, what I'm going to do is I'm going to text him right now, and I hope the speakerphone picks it up loud enough. So let me text him. I'm going to pause the camera for a moment and get him on the phone. All right, we're looking at a Glock 29, and Dave, Officer Dave is on the phone. Say hello, Dave.
Hey everybody, how you doing tonight?
Okay, welcome and thank you for joining the channel. I'm sorry you can't be here in person, but this is pretty close to being in person. Please speak up. You're on speakerphone, and a lot of people are curious as to whether they're in law enforcement or not. You know, why would all these law enforcement agencies choose Glocks? What's your, just off the cuff, what's your opinion?
Well, I can speak for my agency, and what the reasons why we did is uniformity, number one, because they wanted all the officers to have the same caliber weapon, so this way, in case there was ever a big shootout issue, you didn't have to worry about who had the ammo you might need because you were out. You can always switch magazine, and it would work in either officer's gun. So that was a big part. Another part was cost. The Glocks were inexpensive. Glock has a policy, even to this day, that if you sell Glocks, you have to sell it at a certain price to a law enforcement officer. If you don't, then you can lose your ability to sell Glocks. The other thing was safety issues. Glocks did away with the decocking lever, which is what back in the early days when police agencies switched to autos, most of us used Smith & Wessons. And in training, when you're shooting, you're not always emptying your weapon. So you would, part of the instruction is to decock and holster, which is one more step you have to remember to do. And for safety reasons, if you forgot to do that, you can end up, the gun can end up going off while you're putting it back in the holster.
So elaborate on that. You were explaining to me earlier on the phone, when you're doing your ongoing training or you're qualifying to become an officer, exactly what are you saying about leaving rounds in the magazine?
Right. You never want to. One of the things that they train you to do is always count the rounds that you're shooting, and your ultimate goal is to try not to have an empty gun. An empty gun is a useless gun for those few seconds that you're reloading. If you leave that one round in there, and suddenly you realize the suspect is running up on you, you can just jam that magazine back up again and fire and get that one round off. Or if you do have the time to dump your mag and reload, you still got that round in there. You don't have to worry about sending the slide forward. It's already in the hot position and ready to go. And if you're ever in a shootout like that, every split second counts.
Okay,
that's the reason why you try to leave a round in the gun. You never want to empty your gun.
Okay, thank you for that. And how many different guns were you issued?
We were issued 2 because, like my particular agency, they want their officers to carry weapons off duty. They want them out there armed in case they come upon something while they're not working. So, especially in Florida here, it's kind of hot. You don't have big clothing on, so they issued us Glock 22s as your on-duty weapon and Glock 27s as your off-duty weapon.
So cost is a factor. Simplicity of breakdown, I would guess is a factor. Correct?
Yeah, definitely, because you got some people who aren't as good at taking guns down or aren't as big in the gun. So the simplicity of taking the gun down and cleaning it also comes into play.
Also the reliability, I would guess, right?
Well, yeah, the reliability was by far much better than most. It was proven because the military started using them also.
And how about the weight issue? They're light, they're polymer.
Right, they were one of the first polymers that I can remember, so that was another reason why. I mean, when you're walking around for 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on what your shift was, all that weight on your hips starts to take a toll on your hips and your back, so keeping that weight down is a plus also. Yeah,
I believe it was definitely HK was the first to make the polymer, but Glock really ran with it. What other reasons would agencies choose Glock? I think cost, reliability, accuracy, simplicity to break down. just everything about the Glock is pretty simple. And anything else you can add as to why law enforcement agencies choose Glocks?
That's pretty much it. I mean, mostly because they came in with, you know, it is government, and they have to put it out for bid as to who's going to supply these guns. So Glock came in with a cheaper price, so that was probably one of the main concerning factors that they went by.
Well, price is important on everything. And what's your caliber?
Out of a budget, you got to keep it under a certain budget.
That's a good point. And what was your favorite caliber, or not favorite? What did you carry? The .40 caliber, right?
Yeah, the agency issued 40 caliber weapons, and they wanted uniformity, so everybody had 40 calibers. It also makes it easier for training and for qualifying to only have to buy one particular round.
And talk a little bit more before I let you off the hook here about a training. What type of training did you actually do to either qualify to be an officer, or your ongoing training? You were telling me earlier on the phone. Talk a little. You weren't shooting.
To qualify, you have to hit the target in the target area with a certain amount of rounds. And if you threw, I think it was, you needed an 80. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Well, you needed a high score, and you didn't shoot at paper all the time, did you?
Yeah, well, for qualifying, you always shot paper because it had to be in the paper round, so you made sure that you were hitting it in the target area.
Okay.
Body mass areas. For training, we had all kinds of different scenarios where we would set up, you know, doorways with the metal targets that fall over when you hit them, and you had to what's called slice the pie. As you look through the door, you want to work your way into the room and hit the target with the highest amount of threat to you at that moment. Like when you're looking at the door and it opens, you see, let's say the door opens from right to left. What's on the right side of the room is more important at that point than what's on the left side, because they can't see you, you can't see them. So you take you slice the pie as you're coming around, and you hit those targets as you do that.
That's interesting. You mentioned in an earlier video, one of our interviews, which, by the way, everybody, if you go to the playlist, Interviews with Experts, you'll see all of the interviews Officer Dave and I did in the past. A lot of people seem to enjoy them. But you had mentioned that you working on getting a dealership with selling those plates for the back of Glocks. You don't know I'm asking you this, but did you get a chance to consummate that deal? Because we want to sell those on the website.
No, but I'm going to get a hold of the guy tomorrow to see whether he got all the paperwork we sent him, and hopefully we'll be able to get that video going here within the next week.
Okay, good. And we'll talk about that more in the future. Well, thank you so much for your input, and have a wonderful evening. We really appreciate you taking the time for this interview.
All right, Tom. Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Bye. All right, that was interesting. I like to bring guests on the show sometimes, experts, shoe experts, you know, who have been in the line of duty, like Officer Dave. So I hope you got something out of that little chat we had with him. But give me your input on Glocks, just Glocks in general. This is Glock Talk tonight. What is your favorite caliber? I got a 19 here somewhere. One of these is a 19 here. 19. I like the 19 for the range in particular. A little bit lower cost on the ammo. I like the 29s. I got, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them sitting here. And I like the 30s. And I like the big 20 also. This is really nice to shoot. So just give me your input on what your favorite Glock is, and if you're a law enforcement officer in particular, why does your agency choose Glock? You can help a lot of people out throughout the world by answering that question. If you're a Leo, please tell us, what is your input on Glock? If you carry a Glock, do you like it? Why did your agency choose it? Let's all learn from this. We're all in this together. You know how much I really honestly care about all of you. I'm going to keep saying that because it's awesome. I really had some good conversations today, and very heartwarming conversations. Got a lot of good things coming forward. And I'll see you tomorrow night. I'm going to try to keep doing this every night. All right. Good night.